Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. It is Monday, same time, same place. The trio is back in action. We even squeezed in Galley in the last second this time. Bittler was earlier than Galley, so this is like an all-time first, possibly. But back in action. I'm your host, as always, Timuchin here in Chicago. Beautiful weather outside, just to give that update. But it wouldn't be right if I didn't bitch about it. So it did rain a lot this weekend. So I would like to, file my complaints. Yeah, I get that out of the way because if it's not right if I don't bitch about it. But beautiful day out there today here in Chicago, and with us today is Bickler. I'll go with Bickler because he was early for one. So the guest of honor. What's happening, Bickler?
It has been the most Mondayest Monday ever, and I'm glad to be here with you, gents, because that means it's almost over.
I don't know what that means. I'll take that as a compliment, I guess, in some ways. Gally, what's happening with you?
Back from Florida, I'm alive, and I'm here.
That's all that matters. We're barely alive, so that's all. The minimum requirement for the show is like a pulse. So as long as you have that, we are good to go.
You don't even have to be alive inside. I do half of these dead already, just on the inside.
A pulse is a decent requirement. Here's the requirements to you see like that segment to answer this giveaway over here. The requirement is heading over to our YouTube channel and subscribing over there. And with any of our shows and stuff, like Bickler always says,
smash that like button. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
That I can play that like on a loop for like 20 times. We'll just do a show with you just saying that. But let's get the action going over here. As always, we're gonna start with your guys' favorite segment. I do have like an easy one this week because I was kind of scrambling, so it did make it a bit easier over here for the trivia. West Ham is our next opponent. Honestly, I was looking for something on Lask, but good luck with that. I did find some interesting facts, but nothing that would be fair to ask to you guys. So we'll go with West Ham question. Our last game against West Ham was away in April last year. Bickler, can you give me the score and the goal scorers from that day?
I feel like we just did this last week where I'm like, I don't know how you guys legitimately remember stuff from last year. Just random stuff. I don't remember the score. I don't remember who scored. I don't, this is going to shock you. I don't even remember the result. I don't. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm just going to take a fat 0 on this week, and I'm going to move it right over to Gally because Gally probably knows it.
Gally actually doesn't. Gally doesn't know.
Gally crams the night before for these trivia.
No, what do you have, and normally Jesus, Mary and Joseph. I think we won it because it was the second half and towards the end of the year. I'm just going to say the result was 3-1, but I think it's probably not that much because you would never think we would know 4 different guys who scored goals. So it's probably like 1-0, and it was.
I like how you think. I like how you think.
I'm gonna change my tune. I'm gonna say it was 1-0, and it was Bobby. And even if it wasn't, it'll just make me feel good if I got that goddamn thing right. Papa would have remembered if it was Bobby. But I'm going to say 1-0 because you wouldn't think either of us knew 3 different names right.
Well, actually, you know what? I do like that thinking over there, but you'd be wrong. I have a lot more faith in you guys that I make public. But I guess I was fucking wrong. It is 3 goals, actually. 2-1, an away win. Shocker, we got scored on first. I know that's hard to believe, but Paqueta is the one who got it at the 12th minute. Gakpo equalized. I don't know if you guys remember, like a shot from far off on the 18th. And then actually Bowen gets a goal that was overturned with VAR, a close offside. And then Joel Matip is the one that gets the winner off of a Robertson corner kick. How you guys do not remember this is beyond me. But hey, that's what trivia is for, people.
We were basically at that point of the year where most matches we were in the fetal position wishing that we didn't have to watch the rest of the match, but we knew we had this show to do. And a year from now, you were going to ask us a meaningless question about the goddamn result.
You know, that's funny you mentioned that because, yeah, there were some games last year where I was like, man, this has been the only downside of American Scouser. There are some games like I have to watch now, even if I didn't.
I think the only thing sadder than like my lack of just like remembering and knowing this stuff is just the lack of like proactiveness, like to go actually just look at, like, I know you're going to ask a West Ham question. What happened last year would be like square one, right? Think I looked it up? No.
That's why I thought it was easy, and it's like recent memory at least. But hey, while BJ is not back in action yet, you guys should enjoy these easy questions because they will get trickier as we go. So let's get back to the weekend, talk about the game a little bit. But if you have not done so already,
smash that like button.
There you go.
Like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
We really need to re-record that bit with sleeves.
No, I think that's what makes it so special.
It does. It makes you makes you feel like you're at like a rally with a bunch of people about to get angry and yell at people, or like in a mosh pit. Like, it's everything that is awesome about this channel and everything that's wrong with this channel all at once.
It's like, it's weird. It's like a shorter, fatter Pat McAfee pod for just 30 seconds. Weird.
Except for you're not standing. That would be even more uncomfortable because you'd still have your camera. You'd still have your camera right where it is, but you'd be standing giving that speech. I could just see it happening now. Zoom out.
Poor man's McAfee is
Montana's McAfee.
Oh man! Oh. I mean, if you are listening to the podcast, you owe it to yourself to head over to YouTube. First of all, to subscribe, but also to just watch this clip of Victor saying, "Smash what's that subscribe button?" I mean, that is just priceless. It will make your week, month, even year. Okay, so let's get to the 11 over here. We talked in the pre-match a little bit, obviously, Gally, and I think we were. I mean, for the most part, we were semi-shocked, perhaps, but maybe, let's say, pleasantly surprised that McAllister was there because we figured it would give some, stability over there. Bickler, obviously, it didn't turn out that way. I mean, obviously, in hindsight, it was probably not the best decision. Do you think that was Physio's getting it wrong, McAllister himself getting it wrong, thinking he's ready, or maybe the legs were ready science-wise, but the brain was too tired where the body was not doing what, because all the passes were a little short and stuff like that.
I mean, he looked like a player trying to play through multiple time zones. Like, it just, I think some of those things don't show up, right? When they do those tests, like the lactate test, and they do whatever they run them through and the muscle fatigue tests. I was shocked to see him in the lineup in general, just because, like, I feel like Jurgen usually plays this thing pretty close to his chest and is pretty conservative when he's bringing people back from internationals. But then again, like, he's been by far our best midfielder all year. So plug him in and see what happens for 30, and then see some like 7 of the most terrifying passes coughed up in the midfield you'll ever see, and know that was the wrong move.
So let's, Gally, if Klopp had to do it over again, I'm assuming, we were assuming he would not play McAllister. Who do you think would be there? Because I almost feel like Bickler is saying, normally Klopp does play it safe in these situations. Does this mean that he does not feel Endo is ready for that role yet and didn't roll with him? And if he had to do it over again, do you think he puts Endo over there, or he tries something totally different like Curtis or somebody?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I think until he shows me that Endo gets a start, it's not Endo. Like, until I see Endo start a match, it's not Endo. And to me, I think that's just, like, it's kind of unfortunate because I don't think it's his fault. A couple of his performances, he was down to 10 men, and in other times he's been thrown on for what is considered garbage minutes, but I think they're important, like closing minutes, and I think he's done a good job in those performances, but I think he has more to show. I don't know if he'll get the start on Thursday. I really hope he does. If he doesn't get the start on Thursday, he has to start against Leicester, or literally this is Ben Davies all over again, and this guy's just like Arthur Melo, except for he's actually on the bench. And I don't want to say that because he's already played more than those guys did combined.
I was going to say, yeah.
But we always used to say, right, there are opportunities to play a player. This was a perfect landing spot to play a player. You come out of an international break. He just played great for his country in 2 matches where he was man of the match or right up there in the Germany match. as a defensive midfielder for Japan. I just think he has to be able to play in Europa, and he has to offer some minutes. Like, this was a perfect Premier League match to start him in. And then when he didn't go to him, it makes sense to me because I think that was a way to get 4 attackers on the pitch and keep Curtis on the pitch. So but I think to start, he would have probably started Curtis in the 6, in my opinion, and not Endo. I don't think Endo's there yet, or he would have started. McAllister was a reach.
Endo gets the starts on Thursday, so we'll definitely talk about like what we think for the lineup too. I mean, nothing to lose in some ways, and you would think it's a game that is ideal for him in that sense as well. So we'll definitely talk about Thursday. I personally think Endo is starting on that day, but obviously, like the McAllister thing, going back to it. Because here's the thing. I mean, if we're starting the game, obviously we're not starting like a 4-2-4 formation going all out. So that would be interesting to see. Who do you think Bickler starts at 6 if Max says, I need my oxygen mask, I can't play?
It's got to be, I mean, are you talking about Thursday?
I know on against Wolves. If he says, Mac, you're not ready, and maybe gave him the Diaz or Nunez treatments where saved him for the second half. In case they're needed, which obviously they were. Like, who do you think would start as defensive?
I mean, I like Endo's the obvious choice, right? I mean, that's the one player that seems like that's what we brought him in for is the 6. I think he's going to play a lot more this year. I think he's going to get substantial minutes as a rotational piece. And if he doesn't start on Thursday, then I'll have real concerns about what we're doing because that's why we rebuilt this midfield with depth, right? Because we knew that we're going to need to have some key rotational pieces. And him with his kind of leadership, with his background and his pedigree, like needs to be playing. Like that's just the bottom line. Like, so yeah, I'll be really, really curious and really concerned if he doesn't start on Thursday. I thought he should have started, obviously, but like this is also hindsight, right? I mean, we could have started McAllister and McAllister been the difference like he was in the other 2 matches in midfield.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about like how great of a move it was to have him ready in time.
I mean, Alan says we don't need to treat Endo like we did Minamino. And I know, you mentioned like Davies, for example, and Arthur Galley. And I think, obviously just the price tag along and the status of the player and how we brought him in and stuff like that. I think we all assume he's definitely, I mean, like you said, Galley, he already has more minutes than those. He'll definitely get a lot. It's just a matter of earning the confidence overall.
It was a tongue-in-cheek comment, but my point was if he's not getting those minutes and can't start coming off an international break where a guy flew back from South America and was literally Thursday night sucking oxygen in a mountain in Bolivia, like on national television for everyone to see. Like he couldn't breathe. The dude was absolutely shut down. There's a reason Darwin didn't start. He had the weak muscle injury and then he came back late. When we needed him, he was ready to play. I feel like that should have been McAllister, right? To me, Endo starts that match. You bring in McAllister if Endo's poor for 45 minutes at the half. Or you bring him in on 60, and I think Endo can still go out and give you more time in the Europa League. I'm just most afraid that, like, literally Bajcetic gets the start in the Europa League on Thursday because the idea is, like, we owe this kid that, and he's healthy enough to play. Like, it'll be interesting to see what Klopp does because we know how Klopp does it, but we'll get to that match later when we get to it. I just think for the Wolves match, we went away from what we were doing, which it felt like it was kind of grabbing at straws to start McAllister there. And I think Klopp realized it really quick. Him and Pep were talking 20 minutes in. And I think it was about how we rejig this at the half.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's hindsight on our behalf because we did kind of pleasantly surprised is probably the best way I can put it. Like I said, when we saw him in the lineup, because we were kind of worried who's going to make it, who's not, and everything like that. And it did not pan out. But aside from, obviously, that was a big part of it, Bickler. The balls that we lost over there kind of like left us in bad shape defending. But what do you give the poor result to? Because this international game, how come we always start early? And I know the numbers are there. We did it more than everybody else. But for God's sakes, it's not like everybody else is getting an extra 3 days. They're getting an extra 3 hours. It's not like Mac was going to be ready to go in like 3 hours. So why do we keep having this late start disease? Because if you think about it, we had the same thing in Villa game is the only game I can think of this season where we did not, and we got the early goal. That probably is why we didn't have it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know what the cause of the slow starts is. And we can say like, oh, we traditionally always started slow after international breaks. That's fine. But like now we're traditionally starting slow in all matches, which is concerning, right? Like, so like, I don't think we can narrow it down to like internationals coming back and not being ready and everybody being tired. I don't know what the deal is, but I think I struggle in the last, like, I really struggle in the last like calendar year, even going to the back half of last year, to think about games where we started super strong. The last one I can think of is Leicester. Like when we came out and it was actually a game Natty played his pants off. Natty came on, like coughed a couple of turnovers in the attacking half and we scored a couple early. Like, but I mean, yeah, there hasn't been a lot of traditionally strong starts for us. Thankfully, it hasn't caught us in the ass yet, but it's only a matter of time.
So is it, I mean, when we look at it, I mean, these slow starts and stuff, and I realize, Klopp kind of like initially kind of played the high road and maybe didn't want to talk it into existence, Gally, because there's like two ways you can go about it, right? You can kind of talk about it and say, hey, we know this, so we got to pay extra attention and really start on the right foot. But sometimes it almost feels like, and I think that's what he didn't want to do. And is that what's happening, where we kind of definitely talked it into existence? And now when you come out and say, man, we're going to start slow again, probably, you do come out and start slow, even though in the back of your head, you've been told to be over aggressive to fight that, because half of your brain says, well, we're probably going to start slow again. You're actually starting slow again.
Yeah, I think Jurgen Klopp is a master manipulator of men, of media, like even the supporters. Like, I think he manipulates people by basically talking about the things he wants you to hear, and then also then saying he won't talk about the things he wants you to hear by not talking about them, by talking about them. And that's what he did here, right? He went into that press conference and he basically said, we can't keep using the excuse that we always have these early games after international breaks. And then said, but I know the numbers are out there to prove that we've had a lot of these games. But if I talk about it, you'll all say I'm making a big deal about it, so I won't talk about it. Next question. And you're like, what the fuck did you just do? Like, what he did was talk about it. And I think, honestly, this is one of my one gripes. And me and Paul have talked about this. Like, someone asked, like, I think it might have even been you, Timmy. Like, I think we were all talking in the Discord, like, why do we do this? Where does this come from? And it's like, if you constantly put this excuse in your players' heads, eventually they will take advantage of it and it will seep in whether they mean to or not. And Bill Parcells, the ex-football coach, used to always say, if you give a NFL player an excuse, he will use it. And I feel like that's almost what all this talk about the early morning kickoffs and unfair scheduling, referees against us. Like, I think in some ways this stuff eventually seeps into the players' minds, whether it's deliberate or not. And I almost feel like you can see it in them. They looked like a lackluster side. That's the worst 45 minutes of football I can remember this side playing in a long time. And you know what? They played a lot of bad football last year.
Yeah, I mean, to the point where, I mean, I think going into the game, when I woke up in the crack of dawn, and I know people in the West Coast are like, you don't know what crack of dawn is, but when I woke up that early, especially for like the pre-match and everything, and I saw Kwanzaa starting, I was like, holy cow, and that definitely woke me up. But Bickler, I mean, one can argue, I know I would argue that he was probably our best player in the first half.
Yeah, I don't even think that's much of an argument, to be quite honest. I mean, he was like really, really solid back there. And it's weird to see a teenager sort of steady in the troops, right? I mean, because there's a lot of times that they were just absolutely frantic, especially when Neto was just absolutely having his way with Gomez down they really targeted that right channel pretty heavily throughout the first 40 minutes. And really gave us all we could handle between Gomez kind of out on an island, isolated against Neto, and a combination of Montep and McAllister means sucked up too high. But yeah, I mean, I thought he did an amazing job. My thing with Kwanzaa is like, I really hope that this is the year that we see significant rotation for this squad, because I think it's really important for players like Kwanzaa when they come out on fire when they're young to get the repetition and to get into a rhythm. And I think like to give them these starts where they do really well and feel good about each other, and then they sit for 3 months and have to come out on ice and do it again, I think that's really, really difficult. And then that's where we get into situations like Ben Woodburn, even Harvey to some extent, where we're like, oh, well, maybe they're just not good enough. Like, I think it's really hard for us to evaluate. It's unfair to the player. So I hope that this performance like really bets him in, and I hope that this is the year we see a lot more of these players getting rotated in.
Yeah, and I think the squad is definitely deeper for it. I mean, we talked about this before. I mean, for me, especially personally, like the FA Cup and the League Cup, I want us going deeper. And I wish sometimes in the past where we've done it, where it's been nothing but kids. I would rather have a blend in there so that we can keep going further, so you get more playing time for these guys as opposed to everybody, 16 and 17 years old playing men and losing, and then now nobody gets minutes. I think the Europa concept will help over a Champions League. I don't think you're rolling the dice as much and rotating probably as much in the Champions League, whereas you can in the Europa, especially like with the group that we are in. It kind of like suits us, I think, in terms of being able to rotate. So going to the front line, though, and I think that was probably, we knew there was going to be that rotation with the South Americans. Is it fair to say, Gally, and I think you were the one who kind of said when we were talking about like picking one player to make an impact for the season rest of the way, I know you had said Diaz at the time. Does this team go as far as Diaz can go in terms of having somebody on the left? Because as great as Jota as a finisher, he does not have the speed threats on the left-hand side.
Yeah, I do. I think Diaz offers you an electric type player on the other side of Mo that offers defenses like absolute headaches because they kind of have to shift their overall coverage to one side or the other. You can't be covering both guys if they're both wide. And I think Diaz offers so much. He's so electric. And I think the other thing is we kind of saw it even with Darwin's like late introduction. And then he ended up kind of rotating out wide to the left a few times. You saw it in the 2 or 3 times Darwin got the ball and was driving at the defenders. Like there was a true fear. That fear is never there when Jota's on the pitch. The fear is the son of a bitch will pop up from behind you, jump in front of you, and nod one in, and then fucking make some weird-ass face you as he celebrates in front of your crowd and, like, clowning you. Because I feel like he's that guy, like, he looks like he's 5 steps slower than everyone, 4 inches shorter than everyone, not strong enough, yet he's the guy who pops up in the right spot because he's an absolute poacher of the highest quality. Like... And I think that's why he has to embrace being like the super sub, occasional starter, and guy who comes in and wins matches late. And I mean, this club is littered with those players, right? In the history books. And I think that's his role in this side. I can't tell you the last time I saw Jota play 80, 90 minutes, and I thought to myself, wow, that was a great 80 or 90 minute performance. I can usually find 10 or 15 minutes of every one of his performances that looks special. And I think when he does that from the bench, it works. I just don't think it works from the starting lineup, and it surely doesn't work out on the left. And there's 2 better guys, in my opinion, to play through the center.
And that's the thing right now, right? I mean, Bickler, I felt like that also kind of negated what Gakpo can do, because Jota does seem to kind of slide to the middle a bit more. So they do kind of like lose that width when he's out there. And that's when you don't get what you would normally get from Gakpo, where he can drop back and kind of like spread the ball a little bit. I mean, yeah, when you had, Bobby in that role, you had Mane, and I know they would cut inside too, but they were also wide threats at all times. I feel like when you have Jota over there with the lack of speed, it automatically negates what Gakpo can do.
I mean, this is probably a dramatic, like, I don't want to seem like I'm trying to make a hot take here, but like, here's the bottom line with Jota. He's not a 4-3-3 player for the same reason that Carvalho's not, right? For the same reason Carvalho's not. And like, I think he came into this side when we desperately needed firepower, and all he did was score. So he got locked in, and we played him, and we continued to play him. But he's an off-the-shoulder striker. He needs to be playing like I would be playing him with 2 up top. I'd be playing him off Darwin's shoulder. Both of those players play better off of other strikers. And I think it's like an opportunity for like almost two negatives to be a positive, like in a good way. Yeah, I never like him on the left side. I never like him on the. I should qualify that. I never like him on the left side of a 4-3-3 because I think that he wants to drift centrally, and I don't think the spacing ever just cohesively works in that situation. I think because of how prolific he is, we continue to plug him as a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, I think especially it showed in the first half, and maybe it's not fair because it's not like they had a proper midfield to support the front three, but it just felt like it was not working because the pieces that needed the system to work were just not there. But we've seen in the preseason where, I thought Jota and Gakpo were like the best ones in preseason in some ways in several of the games, but it's just not translating as much when you can't bring the speed from the left-hand side. And I know when we switched to that 4-2-4-ish, especially initially, nobody was used to it, so they were all on top of each other for a little bit. It took a while to kind of get used to the spacing and stuff like that and actually use those numbers. And that's when we started really changing the role of Szoboszlai, and he almost became that, like what kind of like Thiago does, Gally, where like comes back, grabs the ball, and starts stuff. And that was mainly due to not having Trent be there to be able to do that role. How would you compare it as a better, worse, moving down the road? Would you want to see Szoboszlai do more of that? Or once Trent is in, you want to slide Szoboszlai back up top? Because he felt like felt like he really liked that role because it kept him in the game at all times.
I feel like Szoboszlai is kind of has that Steven Gerrard moment, like that, and I know it's a little bit of like cheesiness because he picked the number and all that, but I do believe he has a little bit of that Steven Gerrard. Like if he goes like a minute without touching the ball, he feels like it's been 25 minutes and he's like running in like, I'll throw it in, me. And like, you remember when Gerrard used to do that? Like, especially in his younger years when they wouldn't get him the ball and next thing you know, he'd be next to the center back, like taking a going back for like wanting the ball. He's like, give me the ball. Like, I want to feel what it feels like. I need the ball. And you want that out of your best player. And let's be real, like Mo is Mo and he is exceptional. We've seen through 5 games, like we are moving into a world where Szoboszlai might end up being our best player and our best player in a long time. Like no player, in my opinion, has come to this club and taken to a duck like water like he has since Xabi Alonso. And the fact that you're comparing any Liverpool midfielder to Xabi Alonso and how good he was in his first 10 matches, and this guy's only played 5 of them so far. Like, I think he's been that good, and I don't even think we've actually seen the best of him yet because he's still figuring things out. But you just see all the talent he has. He can do it everywhere. He can do it on set plays, do it defensively, do it tracking guys down. He has all the passes. I think he likes to come deep, but if that means taking away from your second best player or second best passer in Trent, like I think what's special about this team is you can have both of them operating at different sectors of the pitch and creating like Thiago-like moments. And I think where we had it earlier, when Trent's healthy, you want Trent there and you want Szoboszlai to create a understanding with Trent that is a partnership. Because I think when those two start clicking, everything in front of them will benefit from it, because then you'll have McAllister hopefully out on the other side as well creating, and that just changes everything. I mean, the transformation we made with this midfield as quickly as we have is really stark. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, to be honest, but it's pretty exciting times in my opinion, if you can't tell by my last monologue.
Yeah, I mean, it is that midfield. Like I said, I think we talked about it after the last game. It feels like anytime somebody gets the ball and looks up, there's that threat of that ball being pinged, where we did not have that before. There were some times where you were like, okay, so when is it going to go to this guy so he can look up and create something? And that makes it a lot harder to defend, obviously, when anybody can ping that ball behind you. Victor, same question to you. And like say, did we just like really find something there, or did we find something that like, well, if needed, I guess we can always use this?
I think we need to see, if you're talking about this modified 4-2-2-2, I think we just need to
more
see
about, using Szoboszlai in that role where he's actually coming back to start building up the play.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we Yeah, we could definitely use it. I think there's more situations where she'd probably be using a double pivot. And so, like, I mean, I don't think that's his strongest suit, but I think definitely, I mean, he's one of those really rare players. Like we talk about classic box to boxes, right? And how hard they are to find, right? And that's what was beautiful about Jordan. I think in a weird way that he's almost better at it than Henderson is because he's technically a better player, like from an actual technical talent standpoint. And so I think he can do that. I also think what I'd love to see, and I think it'd be really interesting, is like we have a player named Mo Salah who at some point is not going to be here. I'd love to see him in more of an advanced right playing position, see what he does. I'm not convinced, like, he doesn't have the quick twitch stuff you want to see from a right winger generally, but he's got top end pace to burn. So I would love to see it and just see what it looks like. But yeah, I think his versatility is certainly one of his key attributes. And we look at between him and McAllister, which is essentially a Swiss Army knife. There are lots of answers for lots of tactical responses, which is exciting.
And I think that, as I was watching that, the reason I asked you guys is, as I was watching that, I was more thinking, man, like if you had Szoboszlai doing this and you still had the ability to have Trent out wide with Mo in front of him, that is a very tough decision that you're forcing defense to make, because he can, like, Szoboszlai can come at you. It's like Matip, but just faster and better. And, you have the danger. You can't leave Trent alone, because if he can get his head up and cross the ball, and it's going to be dangerous. You can't leave Mo alone, because I felt like that would really stretch a defense. And I was wondering, like, if we're going to see more. Obviously, we're not going to know yet, but if we would see more of it in the future, or this was like, well, this is good to know. Like, when Trent is not there, we can use him over there kind of thing, because I thought he was extremely effective. And like I say, maybe it looked like that, but he felt like, going back to what you're saying, Gally, he really did enjoy that, like, because he's a player that wants to be involved. I mean, obviously every player does, but he's like a little bit above and beyond, maybe because of his roles in the past. That's what he's used to be the guy to create. And the same thing in the national team as well. So it looks a lot more familiar to him. A guy that is dividing a lot of opinion is Curtis Jones. So Curtis Jones, 7.0 actually is what SofaScore has, and that looks a lot about passing and accuracy and stuff like that. How would you rate his performance in that midfield, where he had to adjust to several different things, including having two, like, especially Mac next to him for one in the first half?
I mean, I think you were asking me. I'd give him like a B for this performance, because I thought it's above average because he was asked to do so much. I mean, in some cases, he literally, like, you could almost see the look on his face, like when Mac would make a pass, and like Curtis's eyes opened up, like it's almost like Curtis saw himself about to make that pass and was like, "Don't do this, don't do that. We're not supposed to do that." And then was like, I gotta deal with this. And then like did his scramble thing. And I thought he was good. Now, I made a comment in Discord, and I know it was when we were talking about who the best player was on the pitch. And I said it would definitely be Kwanzaa. The only two players who may have been better were Mo and Jones, because to that point they had been invisible, and therefore you couldn't complain about them. Because I don't think Jones played in the first half. Like, I'm not sure he touched the ball. He ran around a little bit and probably like stuck in a tackle. But there was nothing really like to stick your teeth into. But that was more about the whole team's play. I think the kid's finding himself, and I think the more he is asked to do, like you said, Tamicha, to bounce around, to do a little bit of everything. And then as soon as Matt gets pulled out, he's asked to drop into the 6, down a goal, and help like solidify the game. Now, granted, we came out of the second half like on fire, and we were just going at them, and we all knew as soon as one went in, multiple were going in. But they don't know that on the pitch. Like, one little mistake and they're down 2-0, and Jones is a goat again, right? I thought the kid did good, and I thought he did good in multiple ways, and I think he's figuring out how to play within himself. And I think we all on this podcast especially said until he figures out how to be an adult inside of his like young man's body, he was always just going to be a kid that really wasn't worth our time. And he seems to me like he's maturing into like an adult footballer, learning how to like do a job. And I think it's a good sign, right, for our club. It only makes us deeper and stronger.
Yeah, I think he was. I mean, I don't know, Bickler. He was kind of invisible in the first half, but he was doing all the dirty work that normally like Genie or like Hando and stuff would not get credit for. He's the one doing the running, winning the ball, and even in the second half when we were like really attacking, he kind of was still not like, oh, look at that pass that Curtis did and stuff, but he was still doing all the right things, getting the ball, moving the ball and stuff like that. Nothing fancy, but kind of like Gally says, maybe it's almost like he was okay with being invisible as long as it's helping the team.
I mean, I think that interview that he gave earlier this year really kind of shed a lot of light on that, right? And I think there's a couple of things that supporters like. So what was that, like 4 seasons ago? He smashed the banger in against Everton, like something like that. That's the player that people thought that we were going to get consistently in his career, and he's not that player anymore. And that's probably a good thing, like because he's a much more well-rounded, foundationally solid midfielder for this system now. And that's something I didn't think he had in him, to be quite honest. So I think, the argument throughout this game was that he was invisible. And my response was similar to Gally's when I was talking about some of this is like, if he was invisible in that first half, he's automatically the best midfielder out there because the other two you knew were out there for the wrong reasons. So I think, I honestly think we're probably not having this conversation if we don't buy 4 midfielders that are sexy as fuck in the summer, right? Like that's what everybody's thinking about. And I think it's much easier to be dismissive of Jones now just because of who we have in and who we really – everyone wants to see Gravenberch, right? I mean, that's really what we're – at the heart of this is we're not interested in Jones because we got shiny new toys. And I think we need to be careful about that because I think Jones is a really, really good player. He's still very, very young. And contrary to what a lot of people believe, I think that if he was available, there would be a lot of top teams interested. I think he's that good.
Yeah.
I mean, Gravenberch made an appearance. Obviously, not much you can tell from that. I do feel like he will be out there this like Thursday as well. So let's get to that. I think we're all in agreement that we want to go and win this freaking trophy.
Before we touch on Europa, I just have to say one thing. I think we have to, at least as a pod or as 3 guys who take a lot of shots and a lot of fun in the jokes, don't we have to give like 1 minute to opine about the finish that was Andy Robertson's run and putting that thing in with his left foot? Tell me if anyone here has checked. I was in Orlando, Florida, and I'm pretty sure I woke people up 5 levels up in the hotel with the F-bombs and the yelling. And I'll tell you how drunk my wife was. I didn't wake her up, and she was in the room next to me.
Way to throw Kelly under the bus over here.
Yeah, that's what we do. That's what happens when you beat me as bad as you do in fantasy. But she was 5 feet away. She didn't wake up for another good hour. But like that run, that cut inside, and honestly, it was all Robertson. It was a great run. It was a great pass by Mo. But when he opens his body and slips his foot in, that's a striker finish past the keeper in that moment. And for the fact that Robertson did it, I'll guarantee the next 9 times that happens, shit hits the corner flag. So I felt like we had to at least acknowledge it before we move on to the Europa League.
Because for once, he let it roll to his left. Because we were talking about that post-match. If he hits that with the right, that is going wide and high to the right of the goal. The funny thing is, during the week, we had talked with Mateusz. I even asked you guys about it on the podcast, about remembering the assist from Trent to Robertson. And you were talking about the goal he scored for Scotland, and we would probably never see that. So when I see him scoring, I was like, we talked that one into. I'm taking the credit for that. We should be taking the credit for that. We made it happen.
Perfect.
Talked it into
existence. The replay of that goal is one of the most beautiful things ever, too, because it's like it reminds me of those cone drills you do when you're little, and you got to like focus, like going around the cone and then switch into your foot. Because if you watch him, he's like. You can see the concentration. Like he almost does like the thing where like little kids do where he's like bites his tongue, like thinking about it. Like you can tell him he was like concentrating so hard on I gotta get it to my left foot and my knee over it. Like
I'll be honest, that was I was so glad he took it to his left and finished it with that. He has played 100 games for Liverpool. Actually, I thought it would be a lot more. Wouldn't it?
That's Curtis Jones.
Oh, that's Curtis. I was gonna say, but what was this? Was it 300 or something like that for Robo?
300. This was his 300th match,
right?
first as captain. And once again, good captain performance. I mean, not only the goal, I thought he was good all match. I thought he was great with the ref. I thought he was great with his teammates. He wasn't too demonstrative. When they went down, he was the one talking. I said this before the season. He'd have to change I think it was you, Tanuchin. He'd have to change his shithousery and a little bit of his antics if we were to make him captain. I do believe we missed a mark. I think Andy Robertson should be the Liverpool Football Club captain. I will stay on that stump as long as I have to say it. I think that Trent and Virgil, from a leadership standpoint, don't bring as much. And I think Robertson plays more minutes than all of them and should probably. So
the only concern with that is the shithousery, you can go on a diet. It's like my diets. You can go for like a week, but you can't go all the way without having dessert. So I feel like that would eventually come out. You would like, just stick with it this game, okay? No shithousery. I think he could do that. I don't know if he would do it long term, but I agree. And especially, I think he was especially pleased with the goal because, let's face it, the goal we conceded, he could have done a lot better. He kind of like watched that one, but yeah, it was definitely nice to see him get to wait. Alan is saying, wait, the wife is in the next room. Yeah, because he's with the mistress in one room, and Kelly is in the next room.
It was fucking 7:30. It was 7:30 in the morning. And by the way, just so we're clear, Alan, I didn't want a big chested and trying to be an asshole. I had a goddamn villa with a fucking bedroom and a kitchen and a kitchenette and a hot tub and an outdoor patio. If you really want the pictures, I'll show you the 5-star resort.
No, we don't want it.
This is ridiculous
stuff. Definitely don't want pictures.
And honestly, when we're sleeping at home half the time, the wife is in another room because I'm galley and she makes me sleep over there. Christ, people. Have you not paid attention? Exactly.
We don't put a lot of skin. We already have sleeveless contents of Bickler over here. The audience can handle only so much skin for this podcast. Let's get the third.
Love you, Alan.
Who is in that lineup, Bickler? I mean, do you go with pretty much anybody who didn't start, but then give Elliott a chance along with like Ando, Gravenberch and stuff like that? Or like, especially for Gravenberch's case, do you still use him as a sub and go with the guys who have been there a while?
So this is not going to happen. But if it were me, I would have two teams for the cup matches and for the essential group play of Europa. I would have two teams. And I would be playing essentially my second team. I would be playing in a 4-2-4 or that 4-2-2-2 that Leipzig likes to play that we've seen occasionally. And I would go with the back line of Samaika, Kwanzas, Matip, and Gomez now. And then I would be playing Gravenberch and Endo in a double pivot. And then I would be playing I would probably play, let's see.
Elliott.
I would be playing Elliott, Doak, Jota, and then Darwin.
Okay. I like that actually. Because, I mean, there's a danger, right, Gally, in terms of when you put nothing but the bench and nothing but the kids, you are also sending a wrong message that, this is going to be easy over here. Let's send the kids out.
Yeah, I don't dislike that lineup that Paul just said. I don't think that'll be the starting lineup, and I don't think Paul does either, by the way. I think to your point earlier tonight, Timmy, I think the biggest and most important thing is that Kwanzaa starts on Thursday night. He needs to be rewarded for the performance he put in to get a Champions League start on the road in another country. Like, it is a big deal when a kid under 20 gets to travel to another country and play. Doesn't matter where or who, right? You can be in Uzbekistan, ain't nobody bitching. That might be the longest plane ride the kid's ever taken in his life. Like, these are real things that happen and they're big moments, right? Like, and the Champions League is a big moment. So he deserves that start. Simicats has to play, not should play. He has to play, in my opinion. Because Trent and Robertson aren't going to play, I think Van Dijk will play. And that bothers me because I don't know if Kwanzaa can play over on the right-hand side because he is a naturally left-sided center back, which is why he plays on that side. So it'll be interesting to me to see if he gets that start. Gomez has to start on the right. I think someone just dropped in it. Kelleher's going to start, I hope. I mean, I know it's the Europa League, but this is a weekend competition with a weekend group. Kelleher should have this whole competition, in my opinion. Like, he should get it as his. When we get deep, you can make a call for it. Elliott, and I do agree, I think Jones will start this. I have this weird feeling I don't think Gravenberch starts this match. I think he comes on and gets a lot more minutes, either 45 or at the 60 and gets like a full run out. I think Jones is it's crazy to say, Jones is the veteran presence in the midfield with Elliott and Endo. And then up top, it kills me to say this, but I won't be shocked if Mo's playing. I don't want him to play. I think it should be Doak on the right, Nunez in the middle, and I'd actually start Diaz on the left for the plain fact that he didn't start the last match. You can get 45 minutes out of him and then give him a little run out and get him off the pitch. I still think you need some dynamic speed, and I think you need Darwin playing with players he knows. I don't want Darwin going out there with Jota on the left and Doak on the right, and then for a week Darwin reading that he was a bum because he couldn't score through the middle when he's never played a minute with these two guys in the front with him. So I think there's some continuity, and I think Klopp's got it right. I think the rotation last match kind of sets this up to hopefully be up 3-0 at half, and then you bring in some kids. You let Basic get some minutes, Gravenberch, and you kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, usually I think what he likes to do is have one senior guy in every line. So I can see Van Dijk being there because of that. And the fact that, I mean, he has not played in 2.5, 3 weeks or something like that, right? So it might be good for him to come out and maybe come out early. Or, I mean, if things go to plan, this might not be too much of a taxing game for Van Dijk, ideally. But what is the approach that, if it's up to you, Bickler, what is the approach you take? Like, do you start strong and then bring everybody else afterwards? Or do you kind of like sit your big dogs and say, well, if needed, you guys can come in, which is something Klopp normally does when we are in these League Cup games and FA Cup games and stuff. But what would Bickler do? I'm
starting my second team, and then I'm bringing my game changers in off the bench. That's why I have Jota in, because I want Diaz for 90 on the weekend for West Ham. So and I get fair argument with Jota and Darwin up top. I mean, they don't. We've seen glimpses of them play together, but not very often. I just think if you are playing that modified 4-2-4 formation, it makes sense. Yeah, I would start with my team too, and then bring my game changers off the bench.
How about you there, Gally? What would you normally do? Not what you expect, but
yeah, I think if I had my way about it, I would love to see. I mean, I think this team at its best later this year, like in our highest flying moment, if we get all the top level, I think it's Trent playing in the inverted right back position with Gravenberch playing in a double pivot, McAllister and Szoboszlai in front of him with either Gakpo or Nunez through the middle, and obviously Diaz and Mo up top. Like, I think that is our flying high best 11 we can have, and I think it's why we bought Gravenberch. We didn't buy Gravenberch to be a 6. We bought him because in a double pivot, he's a 6 with 8 talents who can do the whole job, and he has the physical size, and obviously he's a perfect human being for how he treats everyone in Liverpool. Like, guy's already a saint. He's been here for less than a month. It's craziness. I think that's like I wouldn't even mind seeing that in this match, but I just don't think Klopp will do it. Like, and that's why I think we start with Endo. You build the midfield through Harvey and Jones being the senior player, and then the crazy part is like in my world, like your senior player is either like Nunez or Diaz or Gakpo through the middle. That's your senior player up top. But I like the idea of Doak starting on the right. I just have this pit in my gut that tells me Mo's going to start this match. Because, Mo's going to want to kick off the Europa League with 5 goals. And then Klopp can say, okay, you got your 5. Now I can sit you a bunch. You can still win the Golden Boot for this tournament. I just feel like that's Mo. And, for some reason, I have this gut pit in my stomach that as soon as I see that team sheet, the first thing I'm going to see is that Mo will start. and
I
it
can
will
see
just
that. I mean, I
drive me
can see that
crazy.
in terms of being the senior in that line, and Mo is going to want to play and maybe like get some goals and get his confidence and mojo back. Because I mean, let's face it, his impact so far has been mostly with setting up goals. He's been involved
So
in almost every freaking goal. But go ahead, Bickler.
when that happens, can we just agree not to ask me how I feel about it on Discord? I feel like we always do this. It's some BS dead rubber match in Europe. Mo starts, and then somebody asks me how I feel about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good point. It's not
I can
wrong.
see that, but I mean, if we're going to have rotation, you are going to put players out there that, regardless of what happens, if they get hurt, you're going to be like, damn it. So it is what it is. I think, yeah, we have some players that need minutes. Brian was mentioning earlier that, like Konata also needs minutes, but I would think that would be more like coming in the last 30 minutes or something like that. Like Van Dijk gets 60, Konata gets 30. Kind of an ordeal is what I'm expecting out of there, and really depends on how the game goes. I guess I think we are kind of assuming, but you don't want to assume in these things. I mean, that's the one thing that in a group like this, you are going to get the best of everyone because this is the game that they want to do their best against Liverpool. But along the same lines, the moment something goes south, like once you get the lead, it's a lot easier to get these teams to kind of collapse because they geared up to not get scored on and hold off against Liverpool. So the moment you get the goal, you kind of get to, oh, that didn't work. And then you can kind of pawn the goals and ideally rotate. But even when we rotate, like I said, if we're starting subs and you're doing rotation, well, then you're bringing the other guys in. But Gravenberch, I think what you're saying, I agree with Gally, but I've stopped playing this game of this guy is great in this spot, so we'll probably be doing this formation because we played that game a lot with Carvalho and Nunez. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying. So let me ask you guys this, though. If you look in your crystal ball right now, Gally, we don't know what the performances are going to be. But let's say first week of November in an ideal starting 11 in a big game, let's say against like Arsenal or City or United or something like that, who will start for Liverpool in defensive midfield?
I think in a perfect world it's Gravenberch if he's earned the job. But I think that's because they're playing more of that double pivot, and I would hope that's the option. If it's not, then it's probably still McAllister as our best 11.
I agree to that. I almost feel like that's what we're working on. Or do you think it we're just buying time, Bickler? I get the sense that we are trying to see if we can make Mac that 6 and then Gravenberch basically play where McAllister is playing, and you still have threats all over the place in midfield. Or do you think Klopp is just buying time until like Basetic comes back or Endo is ready or whatever the case might be, a real CDM? If you
I really hope you're wrong because I love McAllister. I just don't think that's what you're not just, I don't know. I feel like you're getting 70% of the player you bought when you play him that way. Like, so I really genuinely hope you're wrong. I think Gravenberch makes a lot of sense, but Gravenberch is almost primarily played in a double pivot. Like he's never played as a sole anchor 6. And so that's my issue with that. I think the most natural fit, if we're not changing anything tactically in our midfield, I think the most natural fit is Endo. And I think he's that short-term gap until they go buy an absolute stud 6. Whether they think it's Andre out in Brazil that we get in January and bet in, I think that player's got a ways to go developmentally, or whether they go out and in a year or two spend big money on a developed 6. I think that's what makes sense to me. I think Endo's better than a lot of people think he is, despite his age. I would rather see Endo get a run of matches in that spot and find out what we really have there versus what we know we have in McAllister at the 6. And I think you got to find a way to have McAllister on the pitch some way, and I get that. I just don't know. It's going to be – I think it really boils down to the question of how we want to play in the midfield. Do we really want to play with an inverted fullback and pull into a double pivot? Makes sense. I don't see it. I don't see Klopp doing it. If we're going to stay with the traditional anchor 6, I think Endo's the guy.
Fair.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that was going to Endo is my player, but I was going to ask you guys if you picked one person who really needs to have a really solid game on Thursday that maybe who's not featured regularly. who would you want it to be? My pick was going to be Ando for that reason and confidence as well. Not only confidence for himself, I think a lot from the fans too. Because I mean, the poor guy, I don't want to say kid, but poor guy, we have not seen him much when we had 11 on the field. And, obviously he was new. He was brand new anyway. So he's definitely my pick. But Gally, if you picked one guy and he was like, it's very important that he has a solid outing on Thursday, who do you pick?
So I'm going to give it to the guy who I think is the most shoo-in for a start, and that's Harvey Elliott. And I think the reasoning that it's so important for him is I think he has shown, in my opinion, in all 5 matches to be an impact sub that is a positive influence on the football match after he's been brought into it, which I know me and Bickler spent the whole summer questioning where he fit in on the side, if he had a job, and could he do a job, especially if he was asked to be a sub. And he kind of shut us up, at least for 5 matches, with really good performances. Other than
I enjoy the fact that when Harvey Elliott scores, he goes to the stands to celebrate, and he legitimately knows, like, he looks like he's celebrating with 30 dudes who jump the fence, and you legitimately know that Harvey knows all of them by their first name.
Correct. That was where I was going when I was going to talk over. Stop the celebrations with your buddies. Like, stop the guys you play poker with.
Yeah, like those. They just look like dudes that he all grew up with. It's amazing. So Gally went with the player most likely to get a start in this match. I'm going to go with the player least likely to get a start in this match, and I would really like to see Ben Doak have a legitimate coming out party. I would like to see him have a legitimate match that says, we're going to sell Mo at some point for a ridiculous fee. We don't necessarily have to take that money and go sink it into another right winger. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I mean, that's what I actually am looking forward to, these Europa games in that sense, because I think it's going to be a lot of fun to analyze what we're seeing out there. But before we head out over here, let's get some predictions. What do you have for us, Bickler? Thursday, give me a score.
Interesting team. They have done all right defensively in their league. They're not scoring a ton of goals. So I think that sets up nicely from us from a matchup standpoint. I'll go 4-0 Reds.
Damn, that's bold. I'll go with that. I'm all for it. Gally.
I wasn't going that far. I'm going to go 3-0, and I wouldn't be shocked if they score a goal just because I think we're going to have a lot of changes at the back, and I think it's been a long time since Kelleher was in between the pipes, so if one goes in, it won't shock me. But I'll go 3-0. We keep a clean sheet, go positive into the weekend into West Ham, which isn't going to be an easy match in the league by any means.
No, and I think that's another thing. Like, when we do these Thursday lineups, I know Klopp always says, like, oh, we play whoever's best available, blah, blah, blah. But you got to figure, you always have to kind of figure out the weekend matchup and who you're going to need there maybe on that matchup and then decide Thursday accordingly. Because it's not Champions League, and especially in the group stages, I think that's a lot easier to do. But you know what's easy to do?
Oh, no.
Come on.
Smash that like button. Oh, like and subscribe. Smash that like button.
That is easy to do. Yes. So go ahead and do that.
It's easy.
And that's why I think Alan was earlier talking about, like, he can't see straight from the rum. He maybe thought like he was seeing sleeves, but no, actually, do not play with your TV. He's actually wearing sleeves today. But do not forget the giveaway as well. Head over onto YouTube channel and subscribe. It's for free, and we only have less than 2 weeks left before that giveaway is over. So looking forward to Thursday. Enjoy an excellent week, everybody. I will be back Wednesday morning with the morning coffee show, but the Thursday night crew will be back for the Thursday. I'm sure they'll be doing the post-match there. We'll see you guys then. Have an excellent week.